What's up, guys? I'm here to do a video showcasing my vinyl and CD collection. On my last video, I asked if you guys would be interested in seeing this, and a couple people said yeah, so here we are. Most of the stuff I have is electronic music, big surprise, but of course I do have a few non-electronic music here too. And of course this isn't all the music I listen to. I have way more stuff saved digitally, like on Spotify and stuff. And also, I'll be honest, I'm not really good at talking in front of the camera without like a script or anything. So there's probably going to be a bunch of jump cuts. If that bothers you, I apologize. So anyway, let's just jump right into it. I'm going to start off with my favorite artist in the world, Daft Punk. I could go on like a 45-minute rant about why I love them and what they mean to me, but I'm not going to do that. This is their first album here, Homework. It's interesting because in more recent years, I've seen a number of people say that this album is overrated and that it's not very good. Personally, I disagree. I think it's a classic. I mean, the album had to grow on me over time, but now there's really only one song I don't like, that being Rock and Roll. But the rest of the stuff on here is all very good. Okay, next up I got their second album, Discovery. This is my favorite album of all time. Everything about it is perfect. I give it a 15 out of 10. Absolutely adore this album. It's a classic for me and many others, and if you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend it. Got their third album, Human After All, which, of all their albums, this one's my least favorite. I still think it is pretty good. It's got a lot of songs on here that I really like. But I mean, you can tell that this album was rushed, and I've seen a lot of mixed opinions on it. I still think it is good, but, you know. Next up I got Alive 2007. This is a great live album. Basically, if you don't know what this is, it's pretty much a mashup of some of Daft Punk's most popular songs. And there's also some original material worked in there. If you haven't heard anything by Daft Punk, I'd say this is a good starting point. Yeah, this is a ton of fun. Next, I got the Tron Legacy soundtrack that they did. I like the soundtrack quite a bit. Actually, one thing that confused me when I first got this is the bottom of the disc is black. It looks pretty cool though, but I've since acquired a few other things that also have that black bottom, so that's cool, I guess. Also, real quick, I got these two t-shirts here. It's always cool whenever I wear one of these in public and then someone gives me a compliment. Also, as a Christmas gift, I got this Daft Punk clock here, which I think is nice. I also think it's kind of cool how it looks like it's made out of a record. By the way, if you're wondering why the hands aren't moving, it's because I gotta replace the battery. Now let's move on to some side projects that Thomas and Ye-Man did outside of Daft Punk. First up we got Stardust, Music Sounds Better With You. This is a great song, super catchy and easy to sing along to. Those of you that have already heard it will know what I mean. Yeah, it's also got some pretty cool remixes on it too. I got the Irreversible soundtrack. I haven't actually seen this movie, and I'm not gonna, because things happen in it that I would rather not watch. Just Google it if you're curious. But anyway, this is a really cool soundtrack. It's also got some stuff he released before on the tracks on the Rocks. But yeah, good stuff here for sure. Next, I got the Together So Much Love to Give single. This is a really great song. Don't have much to say about it, but I'd recommend checking it out. So that's it for the side projects that Thomas did. Now I got some stuff on the Crydom label. First up, I got Crydom Presents Waves. This is actually one of my favorite things in my whole collection. Like, when I first heard this, I was blown away by it. If you're not familiar, it's a mixed compilation of some of the stuff on the label. There's a ton of variety on here, and I like pretty much every single song on here except for one. That one track being Wet Indies. And even that one, there's a remix of it by Play Paul, which I think is a lot better, but, well, that one's not on here, but this is still a really great compilation. I'd check it out. I also got the sequel, Waves 2. I like this one pretty much just as much as the first one. One thing I thought was kind of odd though was that when I was first looking these up to buy them, I had a hard time trying to find this one for a decent price. I did eventually though. But really solid stuff here. I don't actually have any of the Crydom singles except for one, that being The Turkish Avenger. It's weird because all of the Crydom singles were only on vinyl, except for like 2 or 3 that were also on CD. And for some reason, the CD versions are really hard to find. But I managed to get this one, so that's cool. Okay, now let's look at some stuff on the Ed Banger label. Starting with Justice's Cross. I believe this is the most popular release on the label. For good reason, this is a great album. Only track on here I don't like is the 8th one. The Party, or as it's spelled, the party. This is my favorite album from Justice. My second favorite being Woman, which I don't actually have physically, but I'd recommend that one also. So, yeah. Next I got Mr. Wazzo, Lamb's Anger. This is easily my favorite album from him. He's got a really unique production style. I've never really heard any artist that sounds like him aside from maybe Serious Mo, who's also another really good artist. Also, fun fact, the cover is actually inspired from this famous still from the movie Un Chien Andalou, I think that's how you say it. It's this like really trippy silent film. This isn't perfect, obviously, but I like it quite a bit. I got Sebastian's Total. I talked about this one in my last video. This is a really creative album. The production on it is really bombastic and impressive. And there's only like 2 songs on here I don't like. And out of 22, I'd say that's pretty good. It also came with this little photo album here. So, that's pretty cool. Next, I got Edrec Volume 2. It's a pretty cool compilation. I also got one with a bonus track, so that's cool. Actually, if you have yet to hear anything on the label, I'd say this would be a pretty good starting point, because it shows a lot of what the label has to offer. Not everything, of course, because this did come out in like 2007, I believe. So there's been way more stuff on the label since then. But I'd say this is still worth a shot. I got Edrec Volume 3. Out of all the Edrec compilations, this one's my favorite, mainly because there's nothing on here that I don't like. I think all the tracks on here are enjoyable in their own way. And then I have Edrec Volume 10. I'll be honest, out of all the Edrec compilations, this one's my least favorite. It's still pretty good, though. Shit. Still pretty good, though. Also, one thing that kind of bothers me, even though this is a pretty dumb complaint, but it kind of bothers me how they went from 3 to 10, even though I know why they did it. They called it 10 to celebrate their 10-year anniversary. So, yeah. Favorite tracks on here are probably Reckless, C-Cam, Transition, and Moi. Those are all really fun. To close out the Ed Banger stuff, I got Mr. Flash's debut album, Sonic Crusader. Love this album. Mr. Flash in general is just a really underrated artist. One of my favorites, actually. And I'd recommend checking this album out. So that's everything I have that's on the Ed Banger label. Now let's look at some stuff from Deadmau5. This is his 3rd album, random album title. I'd say out of all of his albums, this one's my favorite. All the songs just work really well together, and they all have great melodies, and they're just really fun to listen to. Next I got For Lack of a Better Name. One of the best parts about this album is the variety, because there's a ton of it, and some of my all-time favorite tracks from him are on here, like More Ghosts and Stuff and Strobe. But I like pretty much all the tracks on here, some more than others, of course. Finally, I got Album Title Goes Here. That's a cool cover. One of the strong points of this album is, like with the last one, its variety. It's a pretty disjointed album, but almost all the songs on here are really enjoyable. One complaint I do have about Deadmau5, though, in general, is his album titles. Because you look at this and you're like, album title goes here, haha, very funny. You know, like, I feel like he could come up with better album titles, but that's kind of a silly thing to complain about, but oh well. And that's all the Deadmau5 stuff I own. Now I want to talk about some Etienne de Crécy stuff, and also Alex Gopher stuff. First up we got Super Discount. This is my favorite album from him, and one of my favorite albums in general. Really unique and fun album here. I'd recommend it if you haven't listened to it already. I also got the sequel to it, Super Discount 2, which doesn't really sound much like the first one. The first one had more disco and funk elements, but this one, for the most part, is more electro and acid. Still really good, though. I'd say this is my second favorite album from him. I would put it on par with the first one. Next, I have Motor Bass, Pan Soul. I'll be honest, before I listened to this, I didn't really understand the hype surrounding it. I saw a lot of people praising it and say it's like one of the albums that began the French Touch movement. But once I actually did listen to it, I totally understood, because this is a really good album. And it's pretty impressive because I've heard they made this album with few equipment. One thing I thought was odd, though, was that I had a hard time finding it for a decent price. For a while, I couldn't find it anywhere for under like $20, and I was actually surprised because I was expecting it to just be the standard version, but I actually got the reissue, which includes the second disc of bonus tracks, so that was a nice surprise. Next up, I got Alex Gopher. It's soon Gopher Party Baby? I think that's how you pronounce it. Out of all the stuff I have, this one wins the award for weirdest cover because, I mean, just look at it. I mean, there's no way this guy is actually this jacked. Also, this right here kind of scares me. But anyway, I think this is actually a really cool EP from him. It's kind of overlooked, and it sounds pretty different from the stuff he would make after this point. But I like it a lot. My favorite track on here is probably, I don't know if you can see that, Gordini Mix. That's a really fun one. Next I got Alex Gopher and Demon presents Was. This is a pretty cool album. Demon is another French house producer that I like quite a bit. The ending to it is pretty weird. If you've heard it, then you'll know what I mean. But other than that, I like it a lot. Also, this is another CD I have where the bottom to it is black. And I also like the artwork on it quite a bit. Next, I got some Alan Brack stuff and also Fred Falk stuff. First, I got the Uppercuts. This is a really nice compilation. It's got some classic French house tracks on it, like Intro and Music Sounds Better With You. It's also got a few of his more obscure tracks on it too, so that's cool. Vulture music mixed by Alan Brax. Basically what this is, if you don't know, is that, I don't know what's up with that barcode, but it's basically like Crydom or Waves in that it's like a mixed compilation of some of the stuff on the label, except this one also has some exclusive tracks on it. Also, this is another one where I really like the artwork on it. I really like the black, pink, and white color scheme. I think it looks really cool. Lastly, we got Fred Falk, Part 4. I'll be honest, this feels more like a compilation than an album. I mean, it's labeled as an album, but I don't know if it actually is. But I like all the individual songs on it, so that's why I have this. Next up, I got some stuff on the Yellow Productions label. Some of it's pretty obscure, some of it not so much. But for the first, 10 years they were around, there were some really great releases on the label. Some of my favorite music, period. I'm going to start out with one of their earliest releases, a finest fusion of black tempo. Basically, sound-wise, this is a fusion between jazz music and hip-hop music. It actually works really well, and all the songs on here are really great in my opinion. It's a pretty overlooked release that I'd recommend checking out at some point. Next, I have Conversations with the French Connection. This is more or less the sequel to A Finest Fusion of Black Tempo, at least sound-wise it is. I don't like this one quite as much, but there's still a lot of songs on here that I do really like, such as Return of the Forgotten Groove, that's a good one. I also like QDB's tracks quite a bit. Next I have The Mighty Bop, La Vague Sunsail. I'm not French if you couldn't already tell, but this is a cool album. Some fun trip-hop and down-tempo stuff. There's also a track from La Funk Mob on it. Another kind of obscure one, but I like it quite a bit. Next I have La Yellow 357. This is labeled as a soundtrack to a film that doesn't even exist, but great soundtrack regardless. More trip-hop and down-tempo stuff on here. My favorite track on here is probably this one, Return at Bates Motel. That's from DJ Cam. That's a really cool one. It's also got some tracks from Dimitri from Paris. Speaking of Dimitri from Paris, I have his debut album, Sacre Bleu. This is another one of my favorite albums. This is actually the Japanese version, and the reason I got this one is because it came with a second disc full of extra tracks and remixes. One of the remixes is actually by Kid Loco, who's another French producer I really like. So, yeah. I really like the vibe this album goes for. It has like an old movie soundtrack feel to it in some parts, and that's pretty cool. Next I have Bang Bang, Jitam, I think that's how you say it. I actually only heard this one recently, but on first listen I absolutely loved it, so had to pick it up. I got Bob Sinclar Paradise. I'd show the front of this, but I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube.
Because it contains explicit material.
But anyway, this is another one of my favorite albums, even despite the whole incident surrounding the final track on the album. Look it up if you don't know about it. But, fun album for sure. I got the My Only Love single, one of the highlights from the album in my opinion. The version on here is actually a little different than the one on the album. It also has a non-album track on it and a remix from Superfunk, so that's pretty cool. To round out the Yellow Production stuff, I got Bob Sinclar's second album. It's a good follow-up to the first one. The disco vibes on this one are a lot stronger. It's too bad though, because this is the last album that Bob Sinclar put out that I actually really like. But we got what we got. Okay, next up I got a bunch of other stuff from a variety of other artists. To start out with that stuff, we got Air from Your Symptoms. This is up there with Moon Safari and Le Voyage dans la Lune as one of my favorite releases from them. One complaint I do have though is that the final track on here, Breaks On, just feels really out of place. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a good song, but definitely could have been better, and like I said, it just feels really out of place compared to the other stuff on it. But everything else on here is fantastic. I'd recommend checking it out. Next up, I got an obscure one that most of you guys probably won't know about. Bust-a-Funk. Now, this is a really great house album with a funk edge to it, as the name suggests. But this is a really overlooked album that I think is absolutely worth your time. So, yeah. Next up, I have Duck Sauce. That's a great album cover, but this album's a ton of fun. I love pretty much every song on here. My only real complaint with this one is that at the end of each song there's a skit, and most of them are pretty annoying, but they're at the very end, so I could just skip over them. But yeah, big shout out goes to A-Track and Armand van Helden for this one. And speaking of Armand van Helden, I got his album To Future For You. This one's good, but in my opinion it could have been better. I mean, there's two songs on here that are just phone call interludes, and they're kind of pointless. They don't really add anything. And there's a few songs on here that are too long in my opinion. But there's still some really great stuff on here, like Summertime and You Don't Know Me. Those are really fun tracks. I got Chromeo's White Women. Got Eric Prydz Presents Prydz. Eric Prydz is my second favorite progressive house producer behind Deadmau5. 3 disc set actually here. Of the 3, I'd say the second one is my favorite. There's a lot of fun and catchy tunes on there. I got Fatboy Slim, You've Come a Long Way, Baby. This is probably my favorite album from him. I like the use of samples on here, like he blends them all really well together. Okay, here's another obscure one that me and like probably 3 other people know about. Fresh Lab Jazzalistic. This is a pretty cool one. It's more trip-hop and down-tempo stuff. Favorite tracks on here are the first 3. Those are all really good. I got Giorgio Moroder, Midnight Express soundtrack. It's got Chase on it, one of my favorite songs from him. I got Kris Menace, Idiosyncrasies. This is another 3-disc set. Of the 3, my favorite is the first one. It's got a lot of really fun tunes on it. I got Outrun by Kavinsky. Some hard-hitting electro stuff on here. Also some more calm stuff like Night Call. But all good stuff on here regardless. It's odd because ever since putting this out, he hasn't really done much. Like, he's only put out 1 or 2 songs, so. Next up I got Mojo, their one and only album before disappearing off the face of the earth. This is another one of my favorites. I like it a lot. Got Roy Davis Jr. This one has a pretty unique feel to it. Got some really good stuff on here. Next I got an unofficial thing here. Skrillex Greatest Hits and Remixes. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. I'm a little disappointed it doesn't have Summit on it, because that's one of my favorites from him, but this is a pretty good compilation. There's also a bunch of spelling errors on the back, but whatever. Next up I have Superfunk, Hold Up. This is a pretty good one. I heard actually that at some point in 2020 they're going to make a second album, so if that happens, that'd be pretty cool. I got the Crystal Method's second album, Tweekend. This is some weird promo version called the Advance Edition. I looked it up and there's a few differences between this and the actual album, but I saw it at a local place for like $2, so I had to pick it up. I also got to switch out the case to this because it's really beat up. I got Astro Pioneers by the Eternals. I think this album is kind of overshadowed by their Wrath of Zeus single, but this is a really cool album. It's got a really cool space concept to it, as you can probably tell by the cover. So, yeah, I'd recommend checking this one out. Next up, I got the We in Music Grand Life single. This is a great dance track. It's also got a remix on it by Play Paul, so that's cool. This isn't as well known as some of the other big French house singles, like Lady and Music Sounds Better With You, but enjoyment-wise, I'd put it around the same. Finally, I got the Work It Baby 10th Anniversary compilation. Work It Baby is the label that Kris Menace ran. Got some really cool stuff on it. One complaint I have is that CD1 exclusives, like 4 or 5 of the songs on here aren't exclusive on it anymore, but I'm just nitpicking. Okay, now let's get into some of the non-electronic music I own, starting with Pink Floyd, Metal, one of my favorites from them. Also, if you ever wondered what this is on the cover, apparently it's an ear, so I mean, that's neat, I guess. Do I need to say what this is? I think everyone... No. Dark Side of the Moon, basically one of the best albums ever made. I think this is actually like the second best-selling album ever, only topped by Michael Jackson's Thriller, which is also a really great album. I'd recommend to check this out, but you probably already have. Next I have Pink Floyd The Wall. This is another one that needs no introduction. Next I have Wish You Were Here. I got Queen Greatest Hits because why not? I mean, these are classic songs that basically everybody knows. We Will Rock You especially has a ton of nostalgia for me, as it's the first song from them I ever heard. Finally, I have the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack with the price tag of $10 on it. I don't know why I paid this much for it, honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still really good, but it's a pretty common record. I don't know. I probably could have got it much cheaper than that, but I think this is like the best-selling soundtrack ever. I think I read that somewhere, but for good reason, though. This is really great. Now let's get into some of the vinyl records I own. I save these till last because I don't have a whole lot of them. And I'm not really fond of vinyl records, honestly. I mean, I vastly prefer CDs for a number of reasons. But I still have some. But usually I only buy records when I can't find them digitally or on CD, and if there's not a good rip of them online somewhere. But yeah, let's get into it. I'm going to move the camera back so you guys can see them better. Okay, let's start out with Rhythm Heritage, Last Night on Earth. This is a pretty cool record. Picked it up out of Goodwill for like $1. There's the price tag on it. First track on here is also a disco remix of the Rocky theme, so that's pretty cool. Also like the cover on this one quite a bit too. Next I have Saturday Night Live, self-titled EP. You're probably wondering who the hell that is, and it's actually an alias of Demon, who I mentioned before. But this is a pretty cool EP from him. Got another obscure one here, Tracks of the Vinyl Dogs. Basically what this is, it's a collection of instrumental hip-hop tracks. I know about this one because Fatboy Slim actually sampled the first track on it. It's pretty repetitive, but there's some cool stuff on here. Next I have Boom Smack. This is another really obscure one. Actually, out of everything in my collection, I'd say this one is the most obscure. Like, I haven't heard a single person talk about this. I'm not even exaggerating. I pretty much bought it out of curiosity. It's another hip-hop record, but I'd say it's pretty neat overall. Also, don't ask me what this is. I really don't know. Those are all the vinyl records I bought so far with my own money. I have more than just that, but they're not technically mine. The rest of what I have is pretty much older stuff from my dad's collection that he had back in the day. Thought some of it was interesting, so I decided to hold on to some of them. So I'll show those off real quick. Got them in this crate here, as you can see. So let's just go through them. We got The Who, The Doors, The Cars, some more Pink Floyd stuff, Relics, and Adam Hart Mother, Peter Frampton, Lynn Anderson, some Led Zeppelin stuff, King Crimson's Discipline. This is a pretty good one. First track on here, Elephant Talk, is completely ridiculous, but still a fun one. Europe, The Final Countdown, Emerson, Lake and Palmer stuff, Def Leppard, some David Bowie stuff, and also some AC/DC stuff. And that's all the music I have for now. I'll probably make a second part of this later on, when I get my hands on more stuff. And also, like I said at the beginning, this isn't all the music I listen to. I got more saved digitally, like some stuff from Aphex Twin, BOC, Jean-Michel Jarre, Kraftwerk, just to name a few. And also some other stuff from some of the artists I mentioned here. So that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.